I hadn't planned to stay long. My friend had told me to swing by, maybe hang out for a while, but when I rang the doorbell, it wasn't him who answered. It was his mother. She opened the door with the kind of effortless poise that made me suddenly aware of myself, of how I was standing, the way my voice might sound, whether my smile looked too stiff. She had that quiet, graceful beauty that didn't demand attention, but once you noticed it, it was impossible to look away. "Oh," she said, her lips curving into a warm smile. "He's not home right now. But you're welcome to come in if you'd like." I hesitated, half turning as though I might leave, but she stepped back, holding the door open wider, and the scent of her home drifted out, faint coffee, something floral, and a hint of vanilla from a candle burning somewhere deeper inside. "Just for a little while," I murmured, stepping inside. The house was familiar in some ways, I'd been here before, but with only her presence, it felt different. Quieter. The ticking of a wall clock seemed louder, the soft creak of the wooden floor beneath my shoes more pronounced. She gestured toward the kitchen. "Sit." I was just making coffee. I followed her, trying not to stare, but my eyes betrayed me. The way she moved was unhurried, almost elegant. She wore a soft sweater, sleeves pushed casually to her elbows, and when she brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, I caught the faintest shimmer of a silver ring glinting under the kitchen light. I sat at the table while she poured the coffee, her back turned for a moment. My chest tightened unexpectedly, nerves, maybe, or just the strange awareness of being alone with her. When she returned and placed the cup in front of me, her fingers brushed mine lightly, whether by accident or something else I couldn't tell. The touch was brief, but it sent a pulse of warmth up my arm. "You seem tense," she said, her eyes settling on me with quiet curiosity. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "I guess I didn't expect to find myself sitting here with you." Her smile deepened, though there was something playful hiding in it. She didn't press, not yet. Instead, she sat across from me, folding her hands neatly around her own cup. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink, the hum of the refrigerator in the background, the faint steam rising between us, and the way her gaze held mine just a second too long. That's when I realized, I wasn't just a guest in her home anymore. I was the focus of her attention. And that attention, steady, graceful, a little teasing, made my pulse race in a way I hadn't expected. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, cradling the warm cup between my palms like it was something to hold on to. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it carried a weight, as if we were both aware of something unsaid hanging in the air. Her gaze lingered on me, steady and calm, and then she tilted her head slightly, lips curving with a knowing amusement. "You look nervous." The word struck me with a mix of embarrassment and a strange thrill. She said it lightly, her tone almost teasing, but there was no sharpness in it, only warmth, as though she was testing the waters, seeing how I might respond. I let out a laugh that sounded smaller than I intended. "Do I?" She raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of her coffee before answering. A little." Her eyes sparkled with quiet playfulness, and she leaned forward, resting her elbows gently on the table. "It's not a bad thing. Just noticeable." The way she said it made me shift in my seat, suddenly aware of my posture, the way I was tapping my thumb against the mug. She noticed that too. "See? Even now," she teased, pointing with a delicate gesture of her finger. "That little habit of yours, like you're trying to burn off the nerves without anyone catching on." I froze, caught, and then chuckled again, shaking my head. "You're very observant." She gave a soft shrug, as though the skill came naturally. I notice things. Especially when someone is sitting right in front of me, pretending to be calm. Her voice dipped lower, softer, and it wrapped around me in a way that felt both comforting and unsettling. For a moment, I had no words. Her presence seemed to press closer, even though she hadn't moved from her chair. The kitchen light glowed against her hair, highlighting subtle strands of gold, and the gentle curve of her smile made my chest tighten. I tried to redirect, fumbling for some casual remark, but she only laughed lightly and shook her head. "Relax," she said, her tone shifting into something soothing, almost maternal yet laced with something else, something that made the air feel warmer. Then, without warning, she reached across the table and let her fingertips rest lightly on my forearm. The contact was feather-light, but enough to still me completely. "There," she murmured. "Better already." The heat of her touch spread up my arm, steadying and unsteadying me all at once. I swallowed hard, trying not to let the silence stretch too long, but she seemed perfectly content to leave it there, her hand warm against my skin. Finally, she drew her hand back, wrapping it once more around her coffee cup. But her smile lingered, and her eyes never wavered. "See," she said again, softer this time, almost like a secret. "Not so nervous anymore." And she was right. I wasn't sure if I felt calmer, or if her nearness only made my pulse race faster. Maybe it was both. After a few minutes in the kitchen, she rose from her chair, carrying her cup in hand. "Come on," she said lightly, "it's more comfortable in the living room." I followed, my footsteps soft against the wooden floor. The living room was cozy, a wide couch, a low table scattered with a few magazines, and a faint scent of vanilla drifting from a candle glowing near the bookshelf. The late afternoon light spilled through the curtains, casting the room in a golden hush. She settled gracefully onto the couch, patting the cushion beside her. "Sit," she said with that warm, casual authority that made it feel less like a suggestion and more like an invitation. I sat, careful to leave a little space between us, though the closeness felt impossible to ignore. She curled her legs slightly, turning toward me as though she had nowhere else she needed to be. Her attention was steady, focused. "So," she began, voice gentle, "tell me what's really on your mind. You've been carrying something. I can see it." I hesitated, staring into the swirl of coffee in my cup. No one usually noticed, not friends, not even family, but her words landed with quiet certainty. "It's nothing," I started, then stopped, realizing how hollow that sounded under her gaze. I sighed, trying again. "I guess. I just feel out of place sometimes. Like everyone else knows what they're doing, where they're going, and I'm just figuring it out as I go." Her expression softened, the playfulness from earlier giving way to something deeper. She leaned in slightly, her hand resting lightly on the couch between us. "Do you think anyone really has it all figured out?" she asked. "Even at my age, I promise you, most of us are still learning. Still stumbling." Her honesty surprised me. I looked up, and her eyes caught mine, steady and kind. "But you carry it well," she added, her voice dipping into a tone that was both reassuring and tender. A silence lingered, comfortable this time. The hum of the ceiling fan filled it, along with the faint clink of her spoon against the cup as she set it aside. Then, slowly, she shifted closer, her hand brushing against my knee in a gesture that felt instinctive, not calculated. The touch was grounding, firm enough to steady me, soft enough to make my chest tighten. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," she said, her voice low. Sometimes it's enough just to be honest about where you are. That's strength too. Her words settled into me like warmth spreading through the cool air of the room. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen, not as someone fumbling or uncertain, but as a person worth listening to. And sitting there beside her, her hand lingering gently on my knee, I realized I wasn't just being comforted. I was being understood. She withdrew her hand from my knee slowly, as though reluctant to break the connection, and then rose from the couch with a smile that was almost conspiratorial. "You know," she said, glancing toward the television, "sometimes the best way to take your mind off things is just to watch something simple. A movie, nothing too serious. Something to help you relax." Her choice of words made my chest stir again. Relax. She'd said it with that same teasing warmth earlier, but now it felt gentler, more like an invitation than a game. She picked up the remote and flicked the TV on, scrolling through options until she found something light, a comedy she said she'd watched too many times but never got tired of. She settled back onto the couch, patting the space beside her once again. This time, I didn't hesitate. The cushions dipped as I sank beside her. The room dimmed as the opening credits rolled, the soft glow of the screen painting her face in shifting light. For a moment, I tried to focus on the movie, but awareness of her filled my senses instead, the faint floral scent of her perfume, the warmth radiating from her body, the quiet rhythm of her breathing just inches away. At first, I kept my hands folded neatly in my lap, determined not to fidget. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. She laughed at a scene, a genuine, musical laugh that made her eyes brighten, and in that moment, her hand drifted down, resting briefly on my forearm as though to share the amusement. The touch was small, casual even, but it lingered. Her fingers were warm against my skin, her thumb brushing lightly before she pulled away. I felt the ghost of it long after. When the characters on screen stumbled into some silly argument, she leaned slightly toward me, her shoulder brushing mine. She didn't move away, and neither did I. The contact was simple, almost accidental, yet every second stretched, heavy with meaning. I stole a glance at her, the curve of her profile, the way her lips tugged into a smile at the screen, the faint line of concentration between her brows. And though she seemed absorbed in the movie, I couldn't shake the feeling she was aware of me just as much as I was of her. Halfway through, she shifted, curling one leg beneath her and settling closer. Her sweater sleeve brushed against the back of my hand. The faintest pressure of fabric against skin, and yet my pulse skipped as if it were more. I told myself not to read too much into it. But when she let her arm rest against mine, not fully, just enough to share warmth, I knew it wasn't just chance. And sitting there in that quiet living room, the world beyond the four walls forgotten, I realized how natural it felt. Not forced. Not hurried. Just two people, side by side, a closeness that seemed to grow on its own with every breath, every glance, every brush of touch. The movie carried on, light and playful, but my thoughts had drifted far from the screen. I was too aware of her, the steady warmth of her arm resting against mine, the subtle fragrance of her perfume, the rhythm of her breath syncing with the quiet hum of the television. I don't know what pushed me to speak. Maybe it was the comfort of the dim room, or the way she seemed so present beside me, like she wasn't just filling silence but truly sharing it. Whatever it was, the words slipped out before I could second-guess them. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere, I admitted softly, almost to myself. Her head turned slightly, her gaze settling on me instead of the screen. The flickering light revealed a change in her expression, not surprise, not pity, but something softer. Attentive. Concerned. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice low, careful. I shrugged, staring at my hands. "I don't know. I just feel like everyone else has their place, their role. And I'm drifting. Not enough for this, not ready for that. Like I'm just standing on the sidelines, waiting to be something." The words sounded clumsy, but once they were out, I couldn't take them back. I felt my chest tighten, embarrassed by how exposed I sounded. But instead of looking away, she reached for me. Her hand found mine, resting gently before her fingers slowly laced between mine. That small act, deliberate, tender, made my breath catch. "I know that feeling," she whispered, surprising me. Her eyes dropped for a moment, as if she were weighing her own words. "You think it goes away with age, that once you're older you'll have everything figured out. But truth is," she paused, her voice growing quieter. "Sometimes you only feel more invisible." I turned toward her, startled by the vulnerability in her tone. She gave a small laugh, one that wasn't meant to be funny, just a way of softening the honesty. "People stop really looking at you. Or if they do, it's with assumptions. They don't see the parts of you that are still searching, still aching." Her fingers tightened around mine slightly, as if to make sure I was still listening. "But you saw me, just now. You heard me. Do you know how rare that feels?" My chest ached at her words. The quiet strength she carried suddenly seemed shadowed by something tender, something fragile. And without thinking, I squeezed her hand back. We sat in silence, our joined hands resting between us. The glow of the television washed over her face, catching the faint glimmer in her eyes. She wasn't just comforting me, she was letting me see the cracks in her own armor. In that moment, the space between us shifted. It wasn't just about nerves or teasing anymore. It was about trust. About being seen. And that closeness, the intertwining of vulnerability and warmth, made the silence feel deeper than any words could. The movie played on in the background, but neither of us was watching anymore. Her hand was still in mine, our fingers loosely intertwined, as if neither of us wanted to let go. The silence between us had changed, no longer heavy, no longer awkward, but thick with something unspoken, a current of awareness that seemed to hum in the air. She turned slightly toward me, her body angled closer, her face illuminated by the shifting glow of the TV. I felt her eyes studying me, lingering longer than before. And then, with a soft smile tugging at her lips, she whispered, "See? You're already more relaxed." The words were playful, echoing her earlier teasing, but this time they carried a different weight. The sound of her voice, low, measured, a little amused, sank into me, stirring something deeper than nerves. I tried to answer, but the words caught in my throat. All I could manage was a faint laugh, half breath, half confession. She tilted her head, eyes searching mine, as though she could read everything I didn't say. Her thumb began to move in slow circles against my hand, such a small gesture, but every pass of her skin across mine sent a pulse through my chest. I couldn't look away from her. Her nearness, the warmth of her body, the calm steadiness of her breathing, it all closed in around me. The distance between us shrank without either of us moving much at all. A shift of her shoulder, the subtle lean of her frame, and suddenly I could feel the warmth of her breath brushing faintly against my cheek. The flickering light of the screen cast shadows across her features, softening them, making her eyes glow in the dimness. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was louder than words, filled with 1,000 things we weren't saying but both could feel. My heart hammered against my ribs, every beat echoing in my ears. Finally, she whispered, almost teasing, almost serious, "You're not nervous anymore, are you?" I swallowed, my voice barely a breath. "Not the same way." Her lips curved, just slightly, and she leaned closer still. The world seemed to hold its breath. I thought she might close the distance entirely, and the thought alone made heat rise to my face, my pulse racing even faster. But she stopped just shy, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, close enough that every fiber of me ached with the nearness. Her eyes locked onto mine, steady and searching, as if asking a question without speaking it aloud. And in that suspended moment, caught between restraint and desire, between the safety of what was and the temptation of what could be, the tension reached its peak. The air was heavy, charged, every second stretched into forever. Then she smiled softly, pulling back only an inch, enough to ease the pressure but not the closeness. Her hand remained in mine, firm, reassuring. "Good," she murmured, almost to herself. "That's better." And though nothing had happened beyond a touch, a glance, and the breath of closeness, everything between us had changed. The silence after her words lingered, softer now, less charged. It felt like the peak of something had passed, and what remained was a calm warmth, as though we had crossed into a different kind of closeness, quieter, steadier, no longer straining against itself. She gave my hand one last squeeze before slowly releasing it, her fingertips brushing against mine as if reluctant to let go. Then she shifted slightly back, enough to settle comfortably into the couch, her shoulders relaxing. I followed her lead, though the echo of her touch still hummed through me. Her eyes softened as she studied me, not teasing now but tender. "You know," she said, voice low, "I'm glad you came by today. Even if it wasn't planned." I smiled faintly, still trying to find words. "Me too," I admitted. "It's different, being here with you." Something flickered across her face, a mixture of surprise and warmth. She nodded slowly, as though weighing the truth of my words. Then, with a gentle sigh, she leaned toward me once more. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate, giving me every chance to pull back if I wanted to. But I didn't. Her arms slipped around my shoulders, drawing me into her. It wasn't just a hug, it was an embrace that lingered, full-bodied and enveloping. I felt the steady weight of her against me, her cheek resting lightly near my temple, her breath soft against my ear. For a moment, everything else disappeared, the faint hum of the television, the ticking of the wall clock, even the restless noise of my own thoughts. All I could feel was her. The warmth of her arms, the steadiness of her heartbeat pressed faintly against my chest, the subtle rise and fall of her breathing. It was both comforting and intimate, the kind of closeness that said more than words ever could. When she finally drew back, her hands lingered on my shoulders, and she pressed a soft kiss against my cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it stayed with me long after, the warmth of her lips, the faint brush of her breath, the gentle intimacy of the gesture. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes bright with something unspoken. "You don't need to be so hard on yourself," she whispered. "You're doing better than you think." I swallowed, my chest tight with gratitude and something deeper I couldn't quite name. All I could do was nod, my voice too thick to answer. She smiled then, a soft, knowing curve of her lips. "You're always welcome here. Don't forget that." The moment settled over us like a quiet promise. We sat together for a little longer, not needing to speak, the glow of the television flickering across the room. I felt calmer than I had in weeks, the nervousness replaced by a warmth that lingered long after. And when I finally left her house that evening, I carried the memory of her closeness with me, her touch, her words, the quiet steadiness of her embrace, and the knowledge that something had shifted between us, gently but undeniably.